That story, Aldrin, from Mcebisi Jonas to Lisecha Khanaro, Daniel Memela, and I think Barbara Creasy. Yes, those are the names. But firstly, how accurate really are these reports? Because it almost feels like we're back to that period before Nasrec, when the factions within the ANC were, information about different things was spreading, but one couldn't really vouch for its credibility.
Exactly, and the point is what's happening now is that because of this mounting pressure on Nhlanhla Nene to resign, there's almost a vacuum. For instance, Nhlanhla Nene has reported over the weekend that Nhlanhla Nene has requested that he wants to step down. Actually, Business Day as well this morning, that he wants to step down. But the presidency hasn't issued a statement to that effect, whether it denies these reports or not. I see that Khusela Diko has spoken to Reuters, for instance. She's the spokesperson of the president, and said that the presidency is not aware of any request from Nhlanhla Nene asking to resign, but there's no official statement. And it's when there's that vacuum of information that then you find that some people then come with all this information, and it leads to disinformation. And that's the reason why you find even today, when we're asking at this press briefing that the ANC had, where they were launching their new website, of course, Nhlanhla Nene being a topical issue, asked the question about Nhlanhla Nene, how the ANC is responding to this, as you said, the EFF as well. And what the ANC's response was to this is just a current affairs matter, and if there are any more further details on this issue, we will communicate that. But they have absolutely nothing to say at this point.
It's interesting that we've had a minister, this is now the Home Affairs Minister, Gigaba, who a court accused of lying under oath. We've had the Constitutional Court judgment against Bathabile Dlamini, and of course Minister Nomvula Mokonyane is facing her own scandals over what happened while she was in the Water Affairs Department. None of these seem to have gained the level of traction that Nhlanhla Nene has post that admission that he lied, and at least some of the expediency that we're seeing behind the scenes, if they are to be reported. Why do you think he's different? It's
because that one thing that we should take into consideration is that when Nhlanhla Nene was fired in 2015 by former President Jacob Zuma, he has always been seen to be a man of principles, a man of high integrity. And then you have Cyril Ramaphosa, who then campaigns to become the president of the ANC on the ticket of integrity. And when he becomes president of the ANC and now president of the country, there are these expectations that now that you have this man that you've put into this position who has now been found to have lied, you must take some sort of action against him. And the other thing that what we should take into consideration here as well is that this is not just any other ministry. This is probably one of the most important ministries in part, if you take into consideration as well Cyril Ramaphosa's campaign around the economy. So this is a very strategic department, the Department of Finance, and also taking into consideration the economic woes that the country is currently facing. And this is something that the EFF, in their letter to Julius Malema's letter to the President, also highlights that this is a very strategic department.
Aldrin, does this not take us back to the conversations that were had post-Nasrec, that in as much as there's this talk of a new dawn and of renewal, certainly the very same people who were implicated in the project of state capture remained within the ANC and also continue to occupy office. And so, this narrative of there being good guys and bad guys who've been at the helm of, the good guys who've been at the helm of the bad guys within the ANC, it simply doesn't exist. It's a false notion.
And it comes down to politics. When it comes down to politics, ethical leadership sometimes goes out of the window. And that's one of the cases that we tried to test when we were looking at Cyril Ramaphosa's 100 days in office, that has he really acted against those people who have been implicated and those people who have had court judgments against them. You've mentioned the issue of Malusi Gigaba, for instance. There's a court ruling that found that he has lied under oath. On the other hand as well, you had Bathabile Dlamini, even far back as when Cyril Ramaphosa was still deputy president of the country, the court had made a judgment that she was partly to blame for the crisis that SASA had faced at the time. And the Constitutional Court said it had made a ruling to try and avert a constitutional crisis, yet Bathabile Dlamini still remained part of the core Cyril Ramaphosa's executive. But what we should also take into consideration is who these characters are. Someone like Mcebisi Jonas, she's not just a minister, but she's also the president of the ANC Women's League.
All right. Eldrin, what happens from here on, very briefly, in terms of the organization as we wait? You know, the presidency, of course, as you've mentioned, they've said they've not seen the response, but very soon we'll have to hear a way forward, because this uncertainty brings us into very dangerous territory yet again.
Well, certainly. We will even this evening, when the president speaks at the Tutu lecture later this evening, we'll be listening very attentively to what he has to say, whether there'll be any hint whatsoever about the current developments that are taking place. But I think what the presidency should do, at least, is to issue an official statement to say that this is where matters stand at the moment. I was trying to speak to Treasury spokesperson as well, and Treasury spokesperson said, unfortunately, because it is the president who appoints the executive, they will not be commenting on this matter, rather speak to the presidency. And the presidency hasn't issued a statement. I've actually tried to call even Zizigoto, for that matter, who works in President Cyril Ramaphosa's office in the ANC, and there has been no, we haven't been winning on that front.
And of course, Nene could, I suppose, take a different road, make it easier for everyone, and simply resign.
That's what some have been saying, that instead of requesting to resign, why don't you just resign? Instead of asking the president to let you go, why don't you just resign if you feel that you have failed the nation? And of course, taking into consideration that apology that he gave on Friday last week.
All right, well, it's a story that's not going anywhere anytime soon, and it's certainly been interesting to watch how polarized social media has been with the discussions around whether or not he should stay and he should go. But the debate that informs whichever side of the coin that people fall into has been very interesting to watch very quickly.
And can I just quickly add, one thing that we know for certain is that a cabinet reshuffle will take place, taking into consideration, of course, that you had the former Environmental Affairs Minister who has passed on, Edna Molewa. So that means that there's at least one vacancy in cabinet, and that vacancy needs to be filled. What will Cyril Ramaphosa do? Is this an opportunity for him to reshuffle things around? And probably, as you said, that some of those people who have been implicated in state capture might find themselves being thrown out of the window.
Well, let's wait and see. After the break, we'll explore this issue further.